Hey everyone! Welcome to another October with spooky, scary games on the horizon. Many people will know about this next game due to the controversy surrounding it, whether unfounded or otherwise. Yes, on top of appearing in a now infamous congressional hearing regarding violence in video games, this game would also become partially responsible for the very ESRB rating system that we have today. But how is the game? Even at the time of its release, critics, while impressed by the technology and scope of the project itself, did not generally care for its gameplay, as there wasn't really much to it in the first place. Between this and the political backlash, it certainly received a lot of hate. But was Night Trap really that bad? We'll look into all that and more. Strap in. Originally released by Digital Pictures for the Sega CD in October of 1992, before being ported to numerous other systems, Night Trap is an interactive game, also known as a full-motion video or FMV game, where the player's timing will determine the course of the game's story and progression. The title was originally meant for a game console called the Control Vision, first thought up by Hasbro in 1985. It was going to be the first system to focus on using VHS technology instead of a cartridge-based medium like other consoles at the time. Due to the high cost and lack of ability to compete with Nintendo's price model, the project was cancelled 2 months before release. Tom Zito, the executive producer of Night Trap, would go on to buy the footage following the Control Vision's cancellation and start his own company called Digital Pictures. Despite the footage being made for the game all the way back in 1987, the title wouldn't see a release until 5 years later on the Sega CD. The project was conceived through a prototype demo called Scene of the Crime. It was a simple interface which would have the player switch between multiple security cameras in order to determine which person stole some money from a safe. Once the scene was concluded, the player would guess which person did it, and the ending scene would vary depending on the choice. This concept of switching between various cameras would become a huge part of Night Trap's core gameplay. Night Trap's plot is all over the place, but I'll try my best to explain it all. You play as an unseen, faceless, nameless protagonist who never speaks. Hey, just like in JRPGs. You work for a group called the Special Control Attack Team, also known as SCAT. Yes, seriously, that is their name and they are proud of it. The team was asked to look into the Martin winery estate after 5 teenage girls apparently disappeared there, and the Martin family refused to let them search the place. Fighting back, as only the SCAT team could, they hacked into the family's security system, allowing them access to multiple security cameras and traps. As 5 more teenage girls enter the house, including a secret SCAT agent, Kelly Med, played by Dana Plato of Different Strokes, it's up to you, the faceless one, to watch through the security cameras and set traps at the proper times. Traps for what, you may ask? Well, they're called augurs. They are basically vampires.
I think these might be vampires we're up against here.
Vampires!
Did I stutter?
Did you say vampires?
Mike, I'm not kidding!
Yes, vampires. The house is infested with them, and to make things worse, the Martin family plans on becoming vampires themselves, just adding to the wackiness.
Listen, things are getting really weird around here.
You said it, Kelly. The augurs were first conceived to be ninjas and then blood-sucking vampires, but James Riley explained in interviews that they were told it would be drawing the line of what's considered reproducible violence, according to Hasbro. This is why the augurs would use strange collar devices to take people's blood away instead of biting them. That looks way scarier to me, but what do I know? All of the game's characters, dialogue, and music are everything you both love and hate about 80s teen horror comedy movies. If you like to watch B-movies that fit into that so bad it's good category, you'll definitely get a kick out of it. The characters meet every stereotype from the annoying and quote-unquote funny types, to the quiet and antisocial, to the young kid with a ray gun that nobody listens to, all the way to the tough, angry, but stoic and clearly misunderstood type.
You'd never understand. Just leave now.
I could also imagine people fighting over which of the women in this they find to be the best one, but that's just silly. We all know it's Ashley. And honestly, it was all pretty tame stuff, especially when you consider the claims that were once made about it during the congressional hearing. Looking at this footage, you may be wondering how the heck you even play this game, as it is admittedly a bit confusing at first. The game runs over a span of about 25 minutes, where augurs appear in different rooms of the house at specific times. Different events happen in these rooms concurrently, making it important to keep an eye on each one, to check for augurs, or watch key parts of the story. You use the D-pad buttons to scroll between the different room icons and select one. Then with another button, you can activate traps for the augurs whenever the meter below you changes from green all the way to red, with the yellow color basically telling you the moment's about to come. There are a few small variations to this as you progress through the game, though. For one thing, there will be multiple segments of the game where members of the Martin family will change their security code, which is represented by a color, to prevent anyone from using their equipment. They'll say the code out loud, but you have to be watching the scene to know what it is, as it's a different color selected at random every single time. If you don't, it'll be a guessing game of trying different colors while trying to capture more augurs. Before the recent anniversary edition of the game came out, you also had no way of knowing what was going on through each camera until selecting it. The game gives you the option to try this too if you really want the original experience, minus the grainy video of the game's earlier editions, of course. When you think about it, the whole thing is actually quite ambitious. You had a team of filmmakers shoot and reshoot multiple scenes in multiple rooms with multiple outcomes. Also, the development team could piece it all together and make a functional, straightforward movie in the process, no matter what actions the player would choose. But the execution? Yeah, let's talk about that. For one thing, the method of this game seems fine enough at first, but repetition will quickly begin to kick in, as you begin to notice the augur sequences are basically the same footage being reused multiple times, whenever they're not interacting with the main characters of the story. The timing in some of these segments is also quite clunky. Remember when I described the segments where you have to change the color code so the traps will still work? Well, in some instances, after hearing the new color code, you're supposed to switch it immediately in order for the traps to work. But sometimes after hearing it, you're supposed to keep the code you have, trap the next augur coming, and then change the color. The game does not tell you this in any way, making all of those attempts at perfect runs even more annoying. The next issue comes in the form of button presses. The game has a few segments where you're given the chance to activate a trap, but are not supposed to, such as this scene where Eddie is disguised as an augur, or this one where you can take down one of the SCAT team members, resulting in an immediate game over. Those are all well and good as they make logical sense and give the player enough information to piece what's happening in front of them, but this is not so for a few of the game's later segments. In this infamous scene, Megan is about to be captured by augurs while Kelly is screaming at you to save her. If you activate the trap the first chance you get, it actually sends Megan down the trap instead, resulting in a game over and this hilariously apathetic reprimand.
Control, how could you let that happen?
Megan. I guarantee you that most people playing the game lost at this part the first time. Why? Because there was no indication that Megan would die if you did it. And now you're probably wondering what you were supposed to do, right? It was to wait for the prompt to appear, ignore it, and then hit the button for a second prompt that appears immediately after. How would you have known this? You wouldn't. There was no way. Back to the halfway point with you. Fun, right?
Way to go, Control! I knew you could do it!
There's another moment later on where the SCAT agents are fighting with members of the Martin family, and you're given chances to hit prompts twice before the third one, which you're actually supposed to hit. Even worse, the first one, once again, results in an immediate game over. Does the game at least have any form of checkpoints to help you out? One. It has one, just before the game's halfway point. This may sound fair on paper, but once you see all of the ridiculous situations that force you to restart in the latter half, like the ones I mentioned above, your patience really gets tested. And I haven't even described the game's biggest flaw, and frankly, its biggest sin. In order to get a perfect run in the game, let alone win, you have to basically ignore a large majority of the game's story to do it. Yes, while this entertaining scene of the girls singing the Night Trap theme song plays, you have at least 3 augurs to trap during it, forcing you to miss almost the entire thing, or risk a game over screen immediately after. Or how about this scene, where Victor and Sheila go on to explain their entire plan to the main characters? Can't watch it, you've got augurs to trap. In real time. Yes, unfortunately, the game's biggest draw is also its biggest flaw. Due to the nature of the game's story and events, there's no way to properly watch the story scenes play out while also avoiding a game over screen and having to restart from a spot that will always feel way too far back.
This is all insane!
If the filmmakers and developers could have simply worked around this and created an environment where both of these activities could have avoided such a heavy collision with one another, we may have gotten a more functional game out of all of this. There are some scenes that do work well alongside the storytelling and gameplay aspects, like getting to knock Tony down the stair trap.
Don't be foolish, Kelly. They wouldn't stand in my way. Would you?
What? He threatened me. As it stands now, I do think there is fun to be had with the experience, as the movie going on throughout the game really is entertaining in its own campy and charming ways, and is worthy of watching. But as far as the gameplay is concerned, it's really just an exercise in frustration. You pretty much have to work your way around all of the gameplay in order to enjoy the actual story content, and that's a tough pill to swallow. This is the type of game most people love to talk about, but few will actually sit down and play all the way through. Especially if they're going for a perfect run. Is there any benefit to getting a perfect run, by the way?
Thanks. You are wonderful. And next time I'm on special assignment, I'm gonna insist that you back me up. I'd go anywhere with you, and feel secure knowing that you were at the controls.
1. At the end, you get to do this.
Nah, you wouldn't. Oh, I can't believe you do this to me after everything we've been through! No!
That said, if you do decide to play this game, make sure it's the new Anniversary Edition by Screaming Villains, as it not only improved on the quality of the footage, but it also somewhat managed to fix the game's biggest flaw. After playing through the game and seeing each of the movies throughout, you're given the option to view them all in a separate theater mode, to watch without fear of an auger interruption. Yes, this version of the game would be the equivalent to a movie like Manos: The Hands of Fate getting picked up by the Criterion Collection. It's that comprehensive.
A closet trap!
But it was going to be a surprise.
But regardless of the issues I described above, the game's legacy lives on. Its impact to the industry itself is simply undeniable. It's not every day that a game gets thrown up with Mortal Kombat in a congressional hearing about violence in video games, and becomes partially responsible for the ESRB rating system itself. Yes, the controversy has pretty much solidified its status in gaming forever, whether deservedly so or not, as I said before. And while I do certainly understand the reasons people despise this game, as you could argue it's not much of a game to begin with, there is still a certain charm to seeing all of the campy footage, making scat jokes, and even capturing an auger or two. But it's even more important to know what you're getting yourself into. This title is pretty much the definition of niche, and not something that I can call good by any means. But if you enjoy cheesy 80s horror comedy, like I certainly do, then there is still some enjoyment to be had with it. Just don't expect it to last too long, or you'll get caught in the night. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on this game in the comments below. And if you're feeling generous, please consider donating to my Patreon, where awesome people like Erica, Brandon, Johan, Cielo, and Thomas Adams all help keep this channel alive. Stay tuned for more spooky fun as October continues. Until next time.